Good evening, everybody, and welcome. My name is Sabir, and I run events here at the Strand. Before we launch into a discussion of Greg McKeown's newest book, Effortless, Make It Easier to Do What Matters Most, I'd like to share a little bit of history about the Strand. The Strand was founded in 1927 by Benjamin Bass over on 4th Avenue's Book Row. Stretching from Union Square to Astor Place, Book Row gradually dwindled from 48 bookstores until, after over 94 years, the Strand is the sole survivor, now run by third-generation owner Nancy Bass Wyden. We want to thank all of you for your support. Without our loyal community of book lovers, authors like Greg, we wouldn't be here today, and we are so very appreciative of it. Tonight, we are thrilled to have with us Greg McKeown for the launch of his newest book, Effortless, Make It Easier to Do What Matters Most. Greg is a speaker, a best-selling author, and the host of the popular podcast, What's Essential. He has been covered by the New York Times, Fast Company, Fortune, Politico, and Inc., and has been interviewed on NPR, NBC, Fox, and The Steve Harvey Show, and is among the most popular bloggers for LinkedIn. He is also a young global leader for the World Economic Forum. McKeown's New York Times bestselling book, Essentialism, The Disciplined Pursuit of Less, has sold more than 1 million copies worldwide. Originally from London, England, he now lives in California with his wife Anna and their 4 children. Joining Greg in conversation is Drew Scott. Drew has enjoyed huge success as co-host and executive producer alongside his twin brother Jonathan of several smash hit TV series for HGTV, including the Emmy-nominated Property Brothers Forever Home, Celebrity IOU, and Brother vs. Brother. His programming is watched annually by 71 million viewers in the US alone, with audiences in over 160 countries worldwide. Drew holds past achievements in the film and television industry as a producer, director, and actor in theater, improv, and sketch comedy. In 2014, Drew and Jonathan founded Scott Brothers Entertainment, a leading producer of cutting-edge lifestyle content. In addition to his television work, Drew has simultaneously built a real estate investment company, a home furnishings line, a leading lifestyle magazine, and hosts the podcast at home with his wife, Linda. So, without further ado, please join me in welcoming Greg and Drew to the stage.
Hey.
I mean, if you can tell, I've been taking notes.
I love those notes, and I love being with you. And it's a great person to have this conversation with for lots of reasons. But I mean, after you hear the bio again, it's like, look, man, you're making it look effortless. You're making it look effortless.
That's the benefit of having a twin. It's actually it's a lot of work for one person, but maybe I'm even more. Maybe it's an HGTV experiment, and there are like 15 of us. Who knows?
You know, that it reminds me of a movie that I can't remember the movie, but the whole premise of it was this magician, right? And there was actually a twin that had been hid the whole time. Then there's a third. Can we imagine if there was a third or a fourth property brother? I mean, it'd be a little unethical, but it would explain.
Yes.
The success we would understand.
I'll have Christian Bale will play the part. But yeah, I'm excited to be here. You know, we've known each other for a few years, and it's always really fun to chat. Before we even get into talking about Effortless, which is phenomenal, I want to mention to everybody, anyone who's out there who has not read your first book, Essentialism. Essentialism is such the perfect combination here. And for me, the reason I really loved it, and we can dig into both books a little bit, the reason I loved reading Essentialism first is because it is the pursuit of doing less to get more out of life. And I'm someone I'm a go-getter. I always have been. Starting my first business at 7 years old. My brain's always go, 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 go. And that was really helping me understand what's most important in life. We're not wired to tackle so many different passion projects. We need to narrow in a little bit. And then coming into Effortless and then really understanding how, when I've narrowed in on what my priorities are in life, how can I make them more effortless? Because like a lot of people, I just go, 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 work, work, work. And I kind of feel sometimes that more work means I'm achieving more of my goal, which is not the case. Which, yeah.
Well, I love that, and it sort of sets us up well. I mean, I think that essentialism, if you had to summarize it in one word, is prioritization. Just as you described it, it's like there's so many things you can do. You can fall into the undisciplined pursuit of more and get pulled so that you're making, you get spread too thin at work or at home. You get busy, but not necessarily productive. And life, even not even with success, but sometimes because of success, start to feel like your life is being hijacked by other people's agenda for you. So that's like essentialism. Effortless in one word is simplification. And right. So it's about removing all of the things that are making what you've identified as essential harder than it needs to be. So anyway, what you're saying, I think, helps to frame both books and how they relate to each other.
Yeah, and it really does. And again, I fall guilty to a lot of what we're going to talk about over the next hour. It's for me, I love tackling new projects. I love creating something out of nothing. I love having a passion, a goal that seems unreachable, but chiseling away at it to make it something that I look back and say, wow, look at what we've accomplished. But then I do load my plate a lot. And for me, my wife and I want to have kids soon, and family is so important to us. And I start to realize there's only so much time in a day, and where am I allotting that time? So one thing I actually want to start off, and I actually have a bunch of questions that I've written down that I want to ask you. So our culture, and I fall victim to this, we equate professional burnout with self-worth. If you're always on your phone and you're the first one to take an extra project, or you're responding to emails on a vacation, then that means you must be successful and important. So why is it that so many people fall for that delusion, and what's the price that we're paying?
Yeah, I mean, when I hear you say it, there's a part of me that just is like, how crazy is that? Like, how backwards is it that we get to the point where we say, if you're exhausted, that's an evidence of success. If you never stop 24/7, if you make hustle your lifestyle, that somehow is, well, you've arrived. I mean, I remember interviewing somebody for the book, Patrick McGinnis, who came up with the term FOMO. Like, he's the first person to use that term and publish it. And he said he got to the point where he felt if somebody it's like somebody who left work on time or at a reasonable time, they must not have a very important job. Like, it's completely reversed. So he'd taken something that was a good idea, which is like, look, work hard, give something, you want to be making a contribution. You're not trying to be lazy in life, but that sort of New England culture, he'd just taken that to the next level. And he just got to the point where there wasn't anything else in his life but this, and it almost killed him, really. And so I think that's where we have to be careful, is where it gets to the point where there's nothing else. And I think the pandemic has produced a lot of that sensation where, the old phrase, we're not working at home, we're living at work. And I think that type of lifestyle is something that, like, surely that isn't what we really meant when we said, let's be successful. Let's break to the next level of success. So there's no time for anything else but more and more projects. So yeah, those are a few thoughts.
It's tough because, I mean, I know I fall victim to that all the time. And even when I was young, I grew up on a ranch. And so we were taught, to put in a hard day's work, and hard work, and the more you can do, the more you're achieving, and the more successful you'll be. And it's, my parents weren't trying to do me any harm by instilling that sort of work ethic and drive and discipline. But I think it really is, now that I'm a little older and looking back, especially that I'm at that point where I'm transitioning into wanting to have kids, it's really making me reevaluate what I've been labeling as priority in life. And, I always say family is first, but then I look at my actions and I realize my actions are not actually saying the same thing, because I'm doing so much at work and so many projects that eat into that family time. So it was really, finding that balance. And so I think there are a lot, well-intentioned people with what they're doing, but I think it's also, there's a fear of saying no, that, it could come at a cost for people if they aren't the ones that are always willing to say yes, yes, yes. So what's a way that you've found that you've been able to help people make that decision without feeling like they're having that FOMO?
Well, I mean, you're talking about mistakes that you're making or trying to figure out the right balance, but essentialism began, in a sense, with my own just complete flop, which is I got an email, as you know this story, but I got an email from my boss at the time said Friday between 1 and 2 p.m. would be a very bad time for your wife to have a baby. And sure enough, that is when we're in the hospital, is Friday, and our daughter's been born and she's well, and Anna is well, but as well as one is after having gone through the valley of the shadow of death the night before. And I went to the meeting. I've got my laptop open, I've got my phone open. I'm basically thinking, if I just do this all in the right way, everyone's going to be happy. And I went to the meeting, and afterwards, even then my manager said, well, look, the client will respect you for the choice you just made. And actually, the look on their faces didn't evince that sort of respect. But even if they had it clear, I made a fool's bargain, right? Like, even if they're like, wow, he is so committed, that is so great. I mean, anyone listening to this story knows, like, that I violated something essential for something non-essential. And what I learned was this: if you don't prioritize your life, someone else will. And that really comes back to what you said a moment ago, which is, you're saying, well, this is my stated priority. Family, home, my stated priority. Mm-hmm. But if your life isn't, then you say, well, if I don't prioritize my family, then someone else will, something else will. And that is a very normal thing in a culture that does, I think, in many, many instances, value sort of what I would now call corporatism. Success in the corporation, success as an entrepreneur, success in net value, success, like, those are the things that get reported. It is a pretty rare thing that you see the article, a great dad, husband, amazing husband for just being good. I mean, like, these things don't get the attention and the praise of the world. So I think it's very easy to get pulled into what Stephen Covey used to talk to me about when he'd say that's secondary greatness. And so we get into focusing on those things instead of the things that we say are actually the most important thing.
Yeah. And honestly, I think that a part of that too is people are thinking, just being a great dad is not going to pay the bills and put a roof over our heads. So if I really want to succeed in life, I need to succeed there at work, at whatever I'm doing, to make the money to be able to have that great family time. But that sort of gets in my mind, where you start to realize that, that family time for me is play. That's fun. Or there are other aspects of what I do. If I just want to go and enjoy, going and playing basketball or going to the gym, or, yesterday I went to Huntington Gardens, which is a botanical garden, just to walk around and soak it in. So many people.
We love Huntington Gardens, by the way.
Really, yeah. It's amazing. Anybody who doesn't know it, look it up. It's phenomenal, and the flowers have bloomed fully. It's gorgeous. But this is the one idea too, that so many people, they have this thought that work and play have to be mutually exclusive. And it's not the case. And if you look, with Jonathan and me on Property Brothers, I work, he plays, but we get the job done. So, it kind of works out there. But aside from that, what's the key to rejecting this false dichotomy? And what are the rewards? I find, aside from me getting to some time off, and Jonathan doing more work, but I think that there must be something for people to understand the difference when you have that downtime to recharge as well, what that can actually do for your work efficiency.
Yeah. Look, underneath both essentialism and effortless, there is, I think, a premise that is like, you aren't going to accomplish, you aren't going to make your highest contribution by taking this path that we're being sold. It's no different than me in that hospital, story. I didn't make a higher contribution by trying to do it all, by trying to prioritize all at the same time. And that was just like a little story writ large. It's like, you don't get to the end of your life and make your maximum contribution by having just devoted everything to work all the time. Like that is the stuff that literally life regrets are made of. Bronnie Ware, the Australian nurse who, was not working with people, she was caring for people at end of life. And so she had a lot of opportunity to talk to people. Well, what do you regret? And top regret of the dying was there were two really top regrets. One was not having lived a life true to yourself, living a life based on other people's agenda for you. And then the second was spending more time at work and not enough time with family. And so it's really, I think, about saying, I think there is a value proposition here, which says, if you are more careful about what you do, if you think more carefully and align your decisions to what is actually your highest priority, you will make a higher contribution overall. And even if you don't, like, so even if I'm wrong about that, what happens is you still invested in the thing that was most important to you. So like the worst case scenario is still pretty solid. But my experience, if you get the most important stuff first, you will end up being, making a higher contribution in the work that you do as well. Which actually, I'm bridging not very elegantly here, but even right from the bio, I kept wanting to ask follow up about a question that I put to you last time we spoke.
Wait, what was it?
Yeah, but it was your pinky promise. So for everyone else that's watching this, right? The last time we spoke was like a week ago or something. It felt like that, and you made a pinky promise with your wife Linda on your excellent podcast At Home with Drew and Linda Scott, and you pinky promised, and just the context was you pinky promised that you would end work at a set time. And then you almost skipped past it as if that was sufficient. But then you committed to a time, which was 6 o'clock, which was, I thought in the moment, I was like, man, that is going to be a test. That is going to be, but so now it's over to you now to this question of like, okay, so this is now the first idea again. What's essential? What matters most? You've identified that that's your priority. How are you doing on that?
So yes, Linda and my family, that's my top priority. And so just to clarify for everyone, so we said 6 o'clock. Linda and I were willing to change after we spoke to you. We were willing to say, okay, let's be realistic, 7 at the latest. But the whole plan was, what did we say? It was 80% of the week.
75% of the time.
75% of the time we would finish work before.
That was the pinky promise.
Yeah, and then we extended our pinky promise to 7. But we have stuck to it. So I will say that. So for example, today,
7, but then you've stuck to 7.
Yeah, but today, for example, Linda has already shut down for work, and it's 6 o'clock Pacific time when I'm done here, and that's it for me. So I don't even consider this work. This is just fun chatting with you. But it's done. So we are really working hard to stay to that. And from time to time, as we all know, something will pop up, and we have to deal with that. But I think putting those ideas in place. Even at work, to let work know, hey guys, just so you know, there's no running late until 8 o'clock. We're getting done what we need to get done, and I'm out of here because it's family time. And I hope everyone can respect that, and everyone does respect it. And I do really love that. And so I like, there are so many things in Effortless and things in Essentialism that I've learned. It's just nice little reminders that seem simple, but we never do it. We never do it, or we never hold to it. And then there are other things that are philosophies that should seem simple as well, but I just have never thought of it before. So I like how it sort of lays out a roadmap for how we can, go after our passions, our goals, make it more effortless. And also a big thing for me is how you broke it into 3 sections. I really enjoy the effortless state, effortless action, and then effortless results. And I think for me, the way that you broke that up actually just helps me work the way my brain works, so I can start to sort of organize myself a little bit through each of those stages of what a project or a passion of mine is. So again, thank you for simplifying that. So here, another one of my questions though that kind of ties into all of what we're saying here is, so you write about outdated goals and suggestions or ideas that live rent-free in our minds. So can you give some examples of that, and then also how we can kick those out of our heads and replace those with better ones?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just riffing now on where we are, but like, take the example that we just had, right? So you've said, okay, you made this decision, this pinky promise. Okay, I'm going to stop work at I don't know whether to say 6 or 7 now, because what I was witness to was 6. So I need Linda here to like change the thing, but I get what you're saying. So we'll just say 7 for the point of this. You make that new decision. There's one of the things that happens as soon as you do that is that you can start to think of all the things, all these like, well, if you do that, can you really be successful? And what's the cost of that? And what's the trade-off? And what is it? There's like all this clutter in our minds before we even get to the task itself, the change we want to make. And all that clutter can really hold us back in being able to achieve great things. So for me, I was just thinking about this today, but I was chatting with Tim Ferriss on his podcast, and he was talking about how in his life, he has had masses of grudges and anger that he's held on to. You know, he said as much as 60 to 70% of his mental and emotional energy just holding on to grudges. And think of the cost of that. That's not like, we wouldn't think of that as typical productivity. Hey, let's get rid of grudges. Let's get rid of all these outdated assumptions that no longer serve us. And yet, what else is it? Like the most incredible productivity leap forward if you could remove all of that clutter. So I mean, I think it's, you know, the effortless state is really about removing all the things that keep us from being in that state, so we can just focus and be at ease on what we've chosen as essential. It's everything that would make it difficult for you in that moment to just go, no. I mean, you're doing it. It's, you know, hats off to you. But like, to be able to go, no, I'm totally at peace with being done at 6 or being done at 7. Like I'm here. It's present. I've done the work, and you've gone beyond that, the effortless state. I mean, by telling the people on the team, hey, listen, this is the boundary. This is the new boundary. What you're doing is making it more effortless to follow through. They can support you on it. They can recognize, well, is it really essential that I interrupt them now? Is it more important than their family time? If you can educate them, then they support you in your stated value. And you've got alignment. And all of that's making it easier to do what you've identified as being essential. Yeah, it really is. I love as well, it's almost like, you know, getting my family as well as our coworkers and friends sort of addicted on the same ideas, which are, it's all positive for all of our lives. It's all, we're keeping each other accountable to it too. And so I'll have, you know, if the other day I was about to do one more take on something that I didn't really need to do. And I think it was one of my camera guys was like, hey, but you have to be out by this time, right? Make sure, because you said, and I was like, thank you so much. So this, looking at effortless. So this is one way that, you know, simplifying, like you're talking about, taking all that clutter out of your head, any sort of, like holding resentments or grudges, whatever it might be, sort of having that clarity in your mind is one thing that can help make things a little more effortless. But also on top of that, the idea of, you know, the productivity, like, so trying to make yourself a bit more productive. And again, like we talked about earlier, a lot of people, including myself, always felt that more work meant more productivity. But you talk about the mastering the art of doing nothing. And doing nothing these days seems like a lot of work. So I'm curious, to make myself more efficient by doing nothing, how am I supposed to do nothing the best? How can I be the best at doing nothing? Yeah, I love that question. And I love it for you too. And for me too. I shouldn't be saying so much you, because I feel I struggle with everything we're talking about. Everything in Essentialism I struggle with, and everything in Effortless I struggle with. So it's, you know, it's one of the reasons I wrote these books. You know, maybe it's the primary reason, to just hold myself accountable to the things that matter most to me. And I mean, one of the things that I've learned, and I bet it's true for you too, is that just because you turn something off, just because you say, okay, I'm done at this time, you know, I've set that boundary, doesn't mean you're suddenly relaxed. You know, oh, this is our relaxing time. That isn't that. For a lot of overachievers, it's actually very uncomfortable to suddenly go, okay, I'm not working. We're very fidgety, and it's like productive fidget, but it's still like, okay. And so even if Anna and I have a term for this now, which is sneaky work, which is like, you know, okay, well, we'll go and sit in the hot tub, but if you're still on your phone, you know, if you're still on Amazon ordering something for the kids, right? If I'm still really checking and responding to email, that's not, we're still just doing work in another environment. And so what I've learned is that we need to actually learn, like, relaxing is a responsibility. It's a capability, and it has to be learned as well as how to be, you know, how to do the work itself. They both have to be learned. And it seems like a strange thing to state, that you have to learn how to relax. But actually, that's exactly what it is, though. I mean, you have to learn how to relax. And so, in fact, so my question, well, there's all sorts of thoughts I have about this, but one thing people can do is to identify things that just spark joy for them, that they love, that just relaxes them, or there's just, it's not even just relaxing, but just rejuvenating for them. It's not the same pace and sensation as that relentless, quite exciting, quite, you know, type of work. is to start making a list of things. At first, when I first was doing this, I could hardly think of anything. And then once you get into it, you're like, okay, and I made a list of like 20 things, and Anna did the same. So I sort of want you to do the same too, like 20 things. You don't have to start with 20 now, but like, what is something that for you is rejuvenating in and of itself? What do you like to do that isn't work, isn't a work project?
Yeah, well, I'll work on that list. I mean, like yesterday, going to the botanical gardens. I mean, that's, for me, that's I just love it. You just soaking in nature.
Do you go with Linda?
Yeah, definitely go with Linda. I mean, she loves it too, and I think things like, you know, just watching a movie, just cuddling up on the couch, and the two of us watching a movie. Those are things that I just love, and it's something that is simple. You know, it's funny, the list I made after the last time we had chatted, because we talked about it's important to identify all of the passions or projects or things that you have in your mind. And so not all the little things are just like a day thing here or there, or an interview or whatever it is. All the big projects that are massive undertakings, like our show, I made a list just to see how many I have, because, you know, we're talking with essentialism, not everyone can take very many projects on. It's just not the human way. We are not wired to take on a whole bunch of different big projects. I had 18 massive projects in the works, and I just realized making that list was something that I should have made the list of the calming things that I love to do that aren't work. But but how do you get past that? I mean, because these are all things that I love and I'm passionate about that I want to do, but I need to learn to narrow in on.
Well, I mean, I do think that's true, but I think it's when I hear those 18. What I hear is two things. I hear someone who is just as you state. Like, I don't feel there's anything inauthentic at all. Pretending. Those are actually projects you care about, you want to do. You don't feel just obliged to do them. They're like, these are cool things to you, and you're like, I'm built to do them, and I want to do them. So it's not a motivation problem. It's not a work ethic challenge. Those things are already resolved. But nevertheless, when you look at the 18, like, there's two ways of thinking about those 18 projects. One is, how can I make it happen, right? How can I do, see, that's kind of impossible. No one can do those 18 things, but I think I can find a way to do it. That's like one way. And the other way is to say, what am I giving up for those 18 projects? Like, what is the trade-off? And somehow really face, I mean, this is, I think, one of the primary misunderstandings about designing life around what's, you know, most important. People make decisions in a vacuum. It's the opportunity jumps up into your mind. You go, oh, that's a cool project. That is so great. And I got so many people, and I can just make that happen. And I'm built to make stuff happen. So let's just go, right? And it's from idea to go without a step of evaluation of like, okay, if we go for this, what do we give up? What am I not going to do? What other project will get pushed into a lower position? You know, what are the relationship? And for a lot of people, for a lot of overachievers, that ends up being, you know, the most is health, and it's their most important relationships. And maybe there's a third thing, which isn't obvious either, which is some other project, project 19, that would be the game changer. You know, the thing that actually would take you to, you know, to a 2x or 10x contribution, but there's no space to even really get serious to think about that, because there's no space to think, because the space between thinking and action is so close that these other things get deprioritized. So I always think like the heart of the matter is to say, am I giving up something essential over here? Those three things we said: health, most important relationships, your family relationships, and then the real breakthrough thing in order to do these things over here. To me, that's the thing to kind of remind yourself about and to get back to, so that you can just go, hey, I'm just going to keep doing it. Look how good I am at doing this. I mean, I'm so good. I can do all these projects. I can keep getting more people and do them, instead of going, okay, the other three.
Well, I think we talked about this when we talked a year ago about essentialism, and it's that idea that, you know, why is it that you have this big project? If you have a to-do list, or you have something really big that you have to accomplish for work or whatever it might be, but you find yourself just continually organizing your desk. And what is that doing? Organizing your desk is giving you a small hit what is it, the endorphins or whatnot, that's giving you a hit of that I accomplished something, but it's just that little thing. You're getting a small hit of accomplishment. But if you were actually to focus in and do the big thing first, the hit of accomplishment that you would get is so much more. It's just that people don't prioritize in life the same way that they do the way that they should. And so I have adjusted a lot, and also delegating, after chatting again about Effortless. Delegating is such an important thing, and trusting that you can bring other people in to help make things more effortless. And that really helps me, because these projects I want to tackle, now I can hand off some of that workload to someone else. I know we only have a few minutes left until we have questions. You're going to be answering some people's questions, but in that note, just to narrow in a little bit more, I mean, so you look at
actually,
some people,
I've got something for you. Because
sure.
Well, I'm just thinking. I might have lost it now, but I was just thinking about. No, I lost it. Go. You're back.
Okay.
On.
No. Well, so talking about, overthinking projects, maybe not willing to delegate, but I think there's one problem with a lot of people, and I've done this too, where you overthink a project, and then that sort of making both the problem and the solution more complicated than is necessary. And you refer to this as the heavy cost of light tinkering. So maybe just like a little hit on what that means and how to cure that.
Yeah, so the heavy cost of light tinkering is just whenever you're working on a project, you want to get the thing done. You want it to be done at a great standard. But there's a risk with high standard people that they want to just keep on, what if I just change this word? What if I just change that thing? What if I just changed it? And that sort of endless tinkering, you start getting diminishing returns, right? So past a certain point, you aren't getting as much. For every minute you spend on that problem, you're not getting back as much as you got back for the first minute you spent trying to improve it. But also you can get to the point where it's negative returns, where every minute you spend on it, you're actually making the project worse overall.
Right.
And so that's clearly, if you get to negative returns, you want to stop. But I've had this happen to me on so many projects. I put my editor through a torturous process on the write-up for Effortless, ironically, like the book cover material, right? Like on the book flap of it. That she sent me over a version, like the very first version she sent over. And I was like, well, I just don't know. Let's keep working on this, keep working on this. We went through so many versions, I cannot even tell you. And then, she may be watching, listening, she's going to tell me off, but then, like, after we secured it, we did it, it was done, and it's the one that anyone reads today. There's nothing wrong with what's there, but I came across, this is months later, the first version she wrote, and I'm like, I kind of think that might have been better than the version we have. I don't even know. But it was definitely not. Wow, I'm so glad we went through those 10
How many hours? Like that's, and I've had that too. How many hours wasted? How many emails? Hundreds of emails back and forth, when in reality, it wasn't that different. And I think one thing you said to me a long time ago was along the lines of, think of this, like if I was sort of trying to micromanage on everything, I don't like to let go of things, and I'm spending 100% of my time doing this, and then consider giving it to someone else. And even if they only do 80% of the job that I could have done, which is not the case, because a lot of times we find people that are more creative in different ways than I am, and it's great to collaborate. But even if it's 80% as good as what I think I would have done, it's 100% off my plate. What's the trade-off? What's the trade-off for having more time with my family, or more time for those priority projects, instead of taking on every little thing? So it's made a difference.
No, but I think that goes. I think that goes to the heart of it, right? Oh, here we go. Samir's here. We are being reined in.
Wait,
because we were just getting going here.
Samir, before you say anything else, I have one last question I need to ask. So Greg, be honest. How effortless is your life?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. I make so much stuff harder than it needs to be still. I do, and it's one of my favorite questions in Effortless. It's the question I leave the book on. It's like, how are you, just that question, how are you making life more difficult than it needs to be? And if you haven't answered that question, you have something precious, because that's where you begin. I have made, I mean, let's think, what have I made more difficult just the last week? I mean, worrying about the book launch rather than just enjoying it. You know, the worrying there's no value. There's no upside to the extra worry. If you didn't have high standards about something, worrying, I think, could have value. You know, you're like, oh yeah, I'm just not getting my act together here. But I think once once you learn to trust yourself that you are a high standard person, right? Like, and you're a high standard person, there's no need for all this tinkering because you're already going to be operating at a high standard. So you can, I think, learn to trust yourself that, like, okay, no, I am going to be working at a certain point. I don't have to be accelerating all the time. You know, if you're in a high performance car, you don't have to have your foot on the pedal the whole time. It's not optimal for you or for safety or for performance or for anything. It's not necessary. And that's sort of, but when you forget that, and I do it on this book launch. Okay, well, we just got to try this and this and this, and let's do everything. And I'm like being effortful about a book on Effortless. Yeah, the irony is there all the time for me. And so I've really been moving into this mode. I mean, even literally in like today, I just was like, no, you enjoy this. Like, this is going to last.
Yeah.
Enjoy this moment. Enjoy the experience. And I felt very at peace today, which isn't, unfortunately, always how I've been feeling about it. So, and there's such a lot of other things that I make harder than they need to be. It's a low-hanging fruit for me to try.
You know, we're human beings. I mean, I think that's the main thing. We're all wired that way. And I like how you told me the last time we spoke, because I'm like that. I have a million things on the go, and I'm always, and you said, look at yourself look at a computer. A supercomputer is something that can output data 1,000,000 times faster than I could do it in my head or more. And it's a fast-paced machine. But even this fast-paced machine, it needs to have that downtime when you're not using it, where it's actually sort of in a sleep mode, or you shut it off, or you need to plug it in and charge it, because it too needs to be recharged. And so, like, there are certain aspects of what we need to remember is we're not superhumans. We need that downtime to get the most out of our uptime, and then prioritize. And for everyone else who's watching, each conversation Greg and I have ever had has been, what, 2 to 4 hours long. Like, there's so much that I still want to ask and say, but all I can say is, everyone out there, please make sure essentialism in one hand, effortless in the other hand, make lots of notes, and then hit us up on social media, because we definitely are going to be having more chats. So
we are. I love it, and I do feel a little crammed today. It's like we need more of a fix, but we will do it. We will do it soon. Drew, thank you so much for taking the time to be here. Everyone's benefited from you contributing here and being so supportive of the launch of Effortless and living it. You are in the wrestle. That's the phrase, right? We got to be in the arena with essentialism and Effortless, and we're not trying to be perfect at it all, but we got to be in the arena. Otherwise, we will take these other default paths that don't work out. So
it's a lifelong thing that we're going to be doing here. How are you being effortless, Samir?
Oh, well, I'm learning from this conversation that I'm affecting my life with far too much effort. So
that's what it is, Samir. You're exactly right. So there are some questions, right, Samir? I think some
yes. And before we transition, just on behalf of the Strand, Drew, thank you so much for joining us this evening. It's been a pleasure listening to you and Greg talk this evening.
Well, thank you, and thanks to everyone who joined us. This is a lot of fun. I'll leave you to your Q&A and the questions. All the best.
Thanks, Drew.
Bye. Perfect. So for our audience, we solicited a few live workshop questions, and if there's time, we will transition into an audience Q&A. But I am inviting on stage our first questioner, Thomas Ladrones. And as it'll take him a second to join, I'm just going to quickly start his question, which begins, essentialism promotes less and better. Effortless finds the ease in getting to the less and better. That all makes sense, but often life throws us more and worse. Do you think life's unforeseen curveballs, suffering, struggles, pain, losses, tragedies, move us closer to the ease of less and better, or does it derail us? Asked differently, do you think suffering offers an invitation to an easier essentialist life or a more difficult non-essentialist life?
Yeah, well, that is Tom. That is quite a question. I think this is the first time you and I have actually spoken, isn't it? Yes. But I know some of the great stuff that you've been doing and applying this. Do you want to give any more context to your question, or do you want me to take a shot at the question?
Well, look, Greg, I really appreciate your first book, Essentialism. I wrote you an email a long time ago, and you know, it changed my life. It didn't save my life. That's not your job. This book of Effortless, which I just finished, is a great adjunct to Essentialism. I've listened to your podcast and I've read your book, and there is a theme that doesn't get mentioned much, which is, I think, a tragic event or some type of event that was unexpected that made a person pivot and forced a choice. That's the heart of my question. Do you think those more difficult curveballs in life give us the invitation to be an essentialist, or drive us crazy and lock us in to be a non-essentialist?
Yeah, I mean, it's good. Before I get to an answer, can you share just a little of your story? I know you have no warning for this. And actually, to be honest, Tom, I didn't know that the question was going to come. I hadn't noticed that it was you that was asking this first question. But I'd love to know, share just a little bit the story that you've shared with me.
I don't want to dominate this night, so
yeah.
But you asked me,
so
I'll do it. In 2014, I would describe my life as charmed. I was running my own business. I had 4 children. I was married to my high school sweetheart. I had my difficulties. I've had my blows in life, but nothing to the extent that I had experienced in 2019. I read your book in 2014. And as I read many books, I've added a potpourri of great wisdom, which you've given me amongst other authors and other podcasts and other lecturers and people and friends and my mentors in life. And I've added them to the repertoire of my life. 2019, the unexpected happened. One of my children suffered a tragedy, suffered an injury that rendered her permanently paralyzed from the belly button down. One of my 4 children at 21 years old would be permanently paralyzed for the rest of her life. So that's the heart of my question, because the response to that phone call, when I got the phone call about my daughter from a trauma doctor in a trauma hospital, and saying, this is the most severe spinal cord injury that you could suffer. Your daughter will never walk. I felt that life was over. We're all in this together if we have children. You either get the call or you don't get the call. But we're all in the same club. I got the call. So I had a choice to make, similar to what you, your wife, Anna, and you faced when your daughter had seizures. You didn't know what to do. Life was turned upside down. So what does it drive you to? It drives you to a hard choice. I'm going to believe the things I said I believed, or I'm not going to believe them. I'm going to run the other direction. I don't think there's any other choice. I had read your book in 2014, and I started to script some of my beliefs around your framework. In 2019, I was given the opportunity to actually believe those things, to implement those things. That's the heart of my question. Do you think suffering, tragedy, the uncontrollables in life help us lean into being an essentialist, which I think is the survival tactic? Or do you think it derails us and drives us away? Is that, hopefully that makes sense.
Tom, you know, we all, I'm speaking for everyone, and I'm confident, we're just grateful that you're sharing and that you're asking such a meaningful question, and a question you can't ask without agony, right? Like you couldn't even have posed that question in 2014. So you know, your life experience enables a new question to be asked, and it's you know, to all of our benefit in our, you know, in our use. We are, you know, we're sorry for the pain of that experience, and for the ongoing ramifications for your family, for your daughter, And I mean, I think I will say this. I've got a couple of thoughts, but they're spontaneous, of course. The first is that I think we often only discover our real values in their violation. Like, it's when somebody treats us poorly or somehow, or just in a certain way, and we're like, oh no, that cannot stand. These things I'm not so bothered about, but this thing matters. Or we have an experience in life that just shakes us, and we just, it violates all sorts of things that matter to us, and we go, my goodness, I didn't even know that was crucial to me until this experience. So I think that's the first thing I want to say, is that sometimes we only discover what's essential, really in their violation, and I think that that's inherent in your story. I think that the second thing I want to say is that every moment, and especially tragedy, especially agony, provides us a clear moment of choice. And I don't think it's that tragedy makes us it's not like everyone facing tragedy ends up choosing this path. It's that tragedy produces clear path, 2 options. And we have to, it's like, no, you can't take both paths now. You can't straddle anymore. You've got to make up your mind. What actually matters to you? Which path are you going to take? And you had that, and you've shared some tonight about what choices you made in it, and a sense of having a choice. I just interviewed somebody else on my mind, Chris Williams, whose family was basically half of his family, more than half of his family, were killed when he was driving a car, and he was hit broadside by a drunk teenage driver. His wife and unborn child died. 2 of his children died instantly. 1 survived in the back with injuries. 1 child wasn't with them at the time. He described to me, and he's written a book on this, but he described to me something I hadn't either picked up on or he didn't write in it. He said, literally, I felt sitting there in the wrecked car, a choice, 2 paths ahead of me. And that struck me in your story, and now in his, and then also for those that haven't read the book, they don't know the story that you're referring to in my own life. But the same thing happened to me too, an actual sense of 2 paths. And I think that tragedy produces, I don't know if it produces these 2 paths or somehow it's just, I don't know why it exists exactly. But in the extremity, and the 2 paths I think are basically something like, you can either take the heavier path that's going to destroy you, or you can take a lighter path that isn't going to somehow be easy, but you're going to know it's the right path. And so this is going to sustain you and get you through this experience. And there are these two paths. And for Chris, it was, I mean, does he forget? Does he bear? I mean, he's going to be beaten up regardless. You don't lose more than half your family in one instant because of a stupid decision that somebody else makes and not be affected. Then no, that's crazy. Of course you are. You're going to grieve in the deepest ways. But is he going to add to that a way of making life even harder than it needs to be? Is he going to add on to that, holding the grudge, holding withholding forgiveness forever until somehow this other person has shown something that will allow him to say, okay, fine, you're forgiven now. I mean, and he, in that moment, made a decision to forgive. That's what's so shocking about the story. And your own story too is to make that choice clearly. I'm not going down the harder path. This path's going to be hard enough already. Life is hard enough already without me adding to it these other burdens and these other challenges. And so that's sort of I would say that's my second thought, is like, you've got to take the lighter path. And I think the final one is just that it's just like getting to this moment, and maybe it's part of this choice between the 2 paths, is to discover that like life happens for you, not to you. And that takes a while to decide, right?
That is a good way to put it.
But it's when you start to say, when you can get to the point when you're dealing with tragedy and you can say, thank you. You know you're on the lighter path.
Yeah,
And
I've come to, and with your help and your framework, especially in essentialism, what's most important is not, to me, I did not write happiness down. That word did not appear. I am less happy than I used to be, but I have more peace. You would use the word synonymous, joy. I think the two can coexist together. I am sad and at peace, and I'm a human being, and I can have those things dangle together.
Yeah.
And I didn't have as much peace prior to this tragedy, but because I focused on what was essential, peace came into my life, and I didn't just get happy. My daughter can't walk. She's 23 years old now.
Yeah.
She's fighting as hard as she ever has. And I'm not happy about that.
No, right.
But I am more peaceful.
And that's just so far, right? That's just at the moment that you are in this journey. Like this is already so new. I mean, I know it's been a couple of years. I understand that, but that's still new in the sense of of the journey. And I'm not in the slightest, both in this or in the book Effortless, trying to minimize these challenges in life. Life is hard. I mean, this is the premise for Effortless. Life is hard in 100 ways for everybody, and in different ways. Life can be full of difficulties, and the complication is we can then add on to that hardship ways of dealing with that difficulty that makes it even worse, makes it even more unbearable, destroys the family, destroys the culture, destroys it all. Like, we can make it all so much worse, and the cost of that is that we can end up burning out just totally and still not achieve the results that actually mattered to us.
You're right.
And so my position in this new book really is that we can make a different choice when we have these paths open up. We can find a way to take, and I know the word, it can be a little triggering for people, but an easier path. There's a lighter path. There's a different way of doing life. And I think that, and the benefit of this is that you can achieve the results that matter the most without burning out. And that is necessary, that's as necessary in really, excruciating experiences as it is in anything else in life.
Well, I don't want to dominate anymore. I'm sorry. Thank you for the time.
It's been a pleasure.
There's been some value to the listeners.
Everybody's valued this. Everybody, I know everyone has.
Keep writing, keep doing what you're doing. And we're very grateful for you. You're a gift to all of us. Go.
Thank you. Go. Yes. Go. Love it.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing with us, Tom. And so our next question is from Lane Caldwell, who I am inviting on stage right now. And as I'm inviting her, I'll be reading her question, which goes, "The last year has required me to constantly redefine how I work and find new ways of doing the work to compensate for decreased lack of resources, staff, time, etc. It often feels like there is no end to the work. There's just continuously more work that I lack the resources to finish in an efficient manner. So I'm constantly pushing myself to do more, and it constantly feels like not enough. Working from home has also come to mean that the work never ends. I wake up, roll over, and begin checking my email on my phone. How do I get more of my life back?"
Yeah, I like that. Sorry, tell me your name. Oh, Lane. Yes, I see that here. Lane, thanks for coming on here. Thanks for asking that question. What else do I need to understand beyond the question that Samir just read?
Well, first, I would like to thank Tom for sharing his story. It was very touching. And thank you and Drew for your time as well. So I'm in sales, and I work for a pretty big company that I'd rather not name at the moment.
We don't want to do anything career limiting in this conversation. That's
right.
That wouldn't be Effortless.
So yeah, it's just, I'm having a very hard time finding the balance of work and life. And if I'm being honest, I had trouble with that before the pandemic.
Right.
I would still work on weekends. I would work late. I would get to the office early. But now it just seems like there's no difference anymore. All I do is I get up, I work, I go to bed, I get up and repeat. You know, it's just, so I'm not sure how to find that balance.
Yeah. You know, let me just, before I respond like with some sort of answer, let me just say to you that what I think you just said, I could imagine maybe you feeling, well, after Tom's story, oh my goodness, so traumatic, so on. Oh, by my story, that's not the same level of, right. But in your voice, I can tell it is for you in your life just that important. You're taught, when you say balance, when you're saying, hey, listen, I need to get a little bit more balance, that isn't really what you're saying. You're saying, what I hear you saying is, I do not feel in charge of my life. Something else is in charge of my life. And it really matters. And it's really a problem. And I don't know what to do about it. Now, am I stating what you are saying, or am I off? You clarify.
No, there's some truth in what you're saying, for sure. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never thought of it that way, but there's definitely a sense that I'm not in control and that I don't have time, basically. You know, I have the weekends off, but that's cooking and laundry and cleaning. And I just don't feel like I have time for myself anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I heard, even in the way you said that, I sort of hear like, again, it's like, this is really a problem, Greg. Like, I'm not being like, oh, hey, it would be nice to have a look. It's like, no, something's going to break. I'm going to break. That's what I hear you saying. More?
I have felt close before to breaking, and I don't know what that would mean if I break, what that would entail.
Right.
But I have felt close.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. You don't have a clear view in your mind of exactly what the cost is if this lifestyle, if we call it that, continues. You don't know what it means, but you do know it's not working.
Right.
It's coming at a very high cost to you.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, before again, I just jump in with specific things. Thank you for sharing that, because I know you're not the only person feeling that right now. I mean, you mentioned the pandemic already, and I think that what few boundaries used to exist between work and life before the pandemic, and I don't think there were many before, to be honest, but at least there was a physicality, right? There was like, kind of work exists over there. Maybe there's a commute involved. You see clients. There's a geography to it to at least somewhat keep these lives separate. I mean, with smartphones, it all goes with you anyway, but there was still a physical separation. But once you pulled those boundaries down, the pandemic said, okay, and it's this old phrase where you say, I'm sure you've heard people say it, but we're not working from home, we're living at work.
I thought of that as I was speaking. Yes. This
is what your life has become. And that, just for a bigger picture thing for a second, what that means is that there was already, as you've already acknowledged, a dominance about work over life before. It's like two tectonic plates pushing against each other. And then one finally wins over the other completely. Well, that was the dominant tectonic plate, right? Like work was, and that is sort of the problem with corporatism and the sort of the culture that we're living in, is that wins. And even when people say, I mean, I don't even like the phrase work-life balance. I don't like it because it implies that sometimes life is more important than work in our schedules. And it's like, when does that ever happen? It's always work's endless encroachment on our life, on personal health, on most important relationships, and then on the projects that matter most to you. Like, that's the order here. So this is all just acknowledging the reality of the situation you're in. And you are nowhere like everybody's in the boat you're in, effectively, right? Well, what can we do? Well, I think that one of the overlaps between essentialism and effortless is the theme of setting boundaries. In a pandemic world, in a corporate environment as we're describing it, there will be no boundaries whatsoever unless we create them. There will be none. There's no natural interrupt. So you can stop. I mean, we talked about it with Drew, and this is why, I mean, obviously we're talking about a conversation other people haven't heard, so I hope that wasn't too weird for everybody. But
no.
You know, him just deciding, we think, I'm sure most of us think, well, Drew, I mean, if Drew's got, he's got it all made, he can choose the time he ends. But as you heard, he wasn't before, and he's having to deliberately put boundaries in there to make life work. And so I think that there's a few boundaries to think of. I do think setting a time for you to be done for the day, even if you say it's a window of done, where you say, this time to this time, I'm just not on email. And you communicate that. Okay, from 6 till 8, I'm not going to be available. But let's just talk about that. Like, let's say that you did that. How do you feel about that when I say it? Do you go, I could do that? Or do you say, in my current work environment, there's just no way I could do that? What's the reaction in you?
I think it's easier said than done.
Sure.
The representatives that I work with, not all of them would honor those hours. And then I would feel, I guess, a sense of responsibility that I will need to answer them right away instead of waiting until the next work day. You're
when you say you were in sales, do you support sales?
I'm on a sales team.
And you do you do sales, or the sales
yes.
people? Oh, you do sales as well. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it sounds to me like it's hypothetical right now, like meaning you don't know what the effect would be because you aren't really having that conversation. Is that true?
That's true.
Yeah. And it's understandable why it's true. I've made that mistake before. I've already shared it at least one time, and I could point to many others where I didn't push back because I thought it would be uncomfortable. I thought it would be career limiting or whatever. But as a result, I don't know what the outcome would have been. It is possible I could have pushed back and it would have just made everything a little healthier. And so I would encourage you this is what I'm going to say to you. That a lot of people think that they have to choose between a polite yes or a rude no. And so as a result, they just keep doing polite yeses all the time. Well, okay, well, now they're asking, now the email comes in at 6 in the morning, that comes in at 11 at night. I've got to be responsive all the time. It's polite yeses all the time. It flows one way. And because they don't want to do rude no's. And so they don't discover there's a third alternative in the middle. And so I would encourage you to even literally to write down what you wish you could say. Like, don't let it just be spontaneous, because then you'll feel tongue-tied and, oh, I feel awkward. But at least write it down. Like, what do you want to say? What seems reasonable to you? How can you then write it up in a way that it sounds like, not that, hey, I'm just complaining, I can't do it, or it's too much, it's overwhelming, which feels, I wish we could just say it like that. In some teams and cultures you can, but a lot you can't. And you might even frame it, you might say, look, I want to provide really great service. I want to provide great service to our best clients. And one of the ways that we need to do that is I need to be able to have boundaries so that when I'm on, I really can be focused and, and energized and come to work feeling, full passion. And I need to be able to have this window to be able to prioritize, recuperation and mental health and family.
Okay.
What's that? Go ahead, Lane.
Oh, no, I was just said, okay.
I think if you do that, you'll find that there is a graceful yes. I mean, a graceful no, excuse me. where you're really saying, effectively, you are saying no. You're saying, look, there's a boundary here, but you can do it in a positive, proactive way. And so, I mean, I think that's what I would encourage you to do, because you do want to have, if you possibly can, a done for the day time. Mm-hmm. You might even yourself start what I call an Effortless, a done for the day list, where you go, okay, there's 1,000 clients, or there's so many clients, there's so many things I could do, but what are the things that I really feel, if I did those things today, that would be valuable and great work. And it doesn't change whether other people reach out to you with other things, and that doesn't solve that problem, but it helps you to not just be so reactive to the endless, literally endless flow of incoming traffic, so that you at least say, these are the things that seem important to me, and I'm going to set boundaries. You know, I'm going to feel, if I do that stuff, I'm going to give myself permission. Okay, you have been productive today. You've done a good thing today. And so I think that those are two things that can help you start to rebuild a little bit a boundary for you. One is helping them to understand that you need boundaries, and one is yourself having boundaries. Some of this is just each of us not stopping. No one actually, very rarely, sometimes very rarely are people actually saying to us, check your phone when you wake up in the morning. The first thing I want you to do is check your email on the phone immediately. And yet most of us do it. No one's forcing us to do that, but we do it because we're into this, we're into this way of living. And so I'm giving you a suggestion of how to challenge a boundary with them, create a boundary with them, but also create a boundary with yourself. So that's my start with that, Lane. Thank you for sharing.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us, Lane, and asking such a question I related to immensely. I appreciate it.
Samir's like, that's my life too, but I don't want to say it. I'm on the Strand right now.
Oh, thank you so much, Greg. This has been a fantastic hour. I think it's been really helpful to a lot of people. I don't know if you can see the chat, but there's a lot of people relating to the content of these discussions. And so on that note, to our audience, thank you for staying past the hour with us. If you have a friend who could use a copy of Effortless, feel free to click the green purchase button at the bottom of your screen. I know I am disappointed the store is closed, as I now cannot leave with this book, but I will be leaving with it tomorrow.
Listen, I know that we're past it. I want to be respectful to everyone. I just have really enjoyed being with everybody today. I feel like, how will I say this? I just feel like a lot of people, I'll say it this way. I think in my conversations with people, I feel there are only two kinds of people in the world right now. There are people who are burned out, and then there are people who know they are burned out. And that's it. That's the world is made up of those two types of people right now. And so it's kind of an enlightenment to discover that you are burned out, to just go, oh my goodness, yeah, that's what's happening. I'm burned out. There's no boundaries with anything. It's just exhausting all the time. And the pandemic, which could have allowed us to, I don't know, to take a nap every day, right, if we're working at home. Somebody just said this to me recently. I thought I would take a nap every day if I was working from home. And they've done it for a year. They've worked at home. They've never taken one nap. This environment has actually often created more exhaustion, both by overworking in a Zoom, eat, sleep, repeat world. You look at your Fitbit at the end of the day, it's 300 steps. Just never ending. But also the isolation produces burnout. Uncertainty produces burnout. Civil unrest and the concerns and the frustrations, the challenges about that, all of that creates burnout. It leaves people so tired. And so this is, I feel this real responsibility with Effortless, that it's like an idea whose time has come. I didn't write it because life is not hard. It grew out of personally painful, agonizing experience with one of my daughters. I won't get into all of that now, other than to say it was a massive neurological condition that went on for 2 years. So let's say that. But I will say that I wrote the book not to make light of those things, but to help those be a little lighter. And so that's sort of the spirit that it's George Eliot said this way. I'll leave it on this note that George Eliot said, "What do we live for if not to make life less difficult for one another?" That's why I wrote Effortless. And it turns out that it's just has the power of relevancy right now, because life feels harder for many people much of the time for the reasons we talked about. So thank you to everyone, and thank you, Samir, and thank you to the Strand for hosting this event and for helping to launch this Effortless movement.
Well, thank you. It's been honestly a pleasure. And to everyone, have a wonderful night, and we'll see you next time.